Hi guys, I've been wanting to do a video for a while, but I guess, I don't know, I sort of needed to feel passionately again about certain things, and I've been doing radio and TV all today to talk about sort of Milan and Napoli. I've done the EuroLeague, so make sure to download that podcast for the UK. But I guess I just wanted to have a place where I could come and really discuss the games and just have a little bit more than sort of a 5-minute opportunity to discuss that before we move on to bigger and better things. And usually that's an English club, and I get that. But on this occasion, I do want to talk a little bit about Milan and Napoli, and sort of what happened before the game, what we were expecting, as well as what happened in the game and the takeaways that we have from that. So we know that obviously Napoli have been flying this season, spectacular to watch. Victor Osimhen, one of the best number 9s in Europe right now, if not top 3 for sure. Just with everything that he's been giving, his technique, his tactical intelligence, his brilliance off the pitch as well as on it, a real leader, and he's been simply magnificent to watch, as is the whole of Napoli. Milan, however, were obviously champions last season of Serie A. They are the Scudetto holders, and they were effective and brilliant in their own right last season. But we haven't really seen too much of that. I'm one of those people that feels like they really didn't adequately replace the squad with the right players. Right now, what you see is that they've got a really good starting lineup, but perhaps not really good alternatives on the bench, and that's really hampered them. We haven't seen the best of the likes of Charles de Ketelaere or Origi, as one could mention. Rebic as well has been one that hasn't really performed. But either way, Milan haven't really shown us their best. But if I really talk about absences, no one or nothing was more important than the absence of Maignan. So if people wonder why, it's not just because he's this great goalkeeper, because he is a sensational, and I have to repeat this 1,000 times, he is a sensational goalkeeper. But what you don't understand with Maignan is just how much he shakes up and changes the formation that you play. So Milan are an attacking team. They are not your defensive Italian cliched kind of squad that looked like they were when they were playing Spurs. They're actually a very attacking team. They play with a lot of intensity, a lot of attacking prowess, very direct. They have a lot of speed, a lot of creativity on the ball, speed of thought, speed of movement. One of the very best sides in Serie A, honestly speaking. But we haven't seen too much of that, and that is because of Maignan. And I'll say this, it's because when Tato Rusciano has been placed at the back, obviously in his place, they started to concede a lot of goals. Some of that has to do with the fact that they were only playing 2 midfielders, so there wasn't enough cover, not enough defensive sort of a filter, if you like, for the midfield. So that added so much pressure to the likes of Tomori and co, who were being criticised for their performance. But I think overall the strategy didn't help them. So in order for Pioli to sort of stop that, he went to a 3-man backline. And what you ended up seeing was a Milan side that sat deeper, played with 3 at the back, that started to keep clean sheets like we saw in the Champions League against Spurs, but were just rather terrible to watch going forward. And that was the problem, because when you prioritize defense, then you're basically stopping the attack from really being able to indulge in what they do best. Rafael Leao has spoken about positioning, and he likes to play sort of not so close to goal in the way that they were playing when they did have a 3-man back line. Now with Maignan back, his ability on the ball and his ability to distribute from the back and deliver these just perfect passes forward allows them to raise their center of gravity, to play more on the front foot, because they're not having to sort of come back and support him all the time. And then it allows for a more attacking and brilliant Milan side, Leao back sort of to the left. But what was really interesting in the matchup against Napoli sort of 10 days ago, and that was in Stadio Diego Armando Maradona, was that Bennacer was placed just behind the striker. So it was a 3-man back midfield, but Bennacer further forward. So he could provide to the attack because of his ability on the ball, but at the same time act as somebody who could defend from the front line, because he was supposed to be marking Lobotka, so the creator of the opponent, if you like. So that was his role, and I think that he did it massively well, brilliantly, really. And then what you had was Brahim Diaz on the right and Rafael Leao in his usual position on the left. Milan was spectacular, direct, counter-attacking, managed 4 goals. Napoli was slow. Lobotka was really heavily caged, as was Kvaratskhelia. They just couldn't get out. And the ball just moved so slowly in midfield. So there were just no real opportunities to create and to really score. And that was the problem. So Arrigo Sacchi at the time in Gazzetta dello Sport wrote the next day in his column that he felt that even if Victor Osimhen was playing, that he doesn't think this Napoli side would have managed against Milan. I don't know how much I agree with that, because if you listen to some of the comments that Stefano Pioli said afterwards, he said, sorry, not Stefano Pioli, rather Spalletti said afterwards, was that what Victor Osimhen does so well is so many things, but the most important thing is that he takes defenders away. He creates space because he attracts so much attention, and he runs so well that it allows his teammates to really capitalize on the spaces he leaves behind and exploit that to deliver those perfect shots, to dribble or take care of what they need to take care of to ensure that they score. And that's what Osimhen does. I mean, other than technique and intelligence, it's just how he attracts so much attention, and he knows how to take care of that in his own way. And it allows Kvaratskhelia to show you his best, and Zielinski to take shots, and for the midfield to really get involved as well. And unfortunately, without him, you see that there's something missing there. So obviously, we'll never know what Napoli could have looked like with him in that match. Obviously, his natural replacement in Giovanni Simeone was also unavailable because of injury, and Raspadori wasn't fully fit to take that role. So we had a false 9 in Elmas against a strong Milan defense, and obviously a great Maignan. So it was always going to be tough for them to begin with. So those were all the things coming into this match. And Pioli at the time was hailed for being this tactical genius that found a way to really stop Napoli from building and creating, slowing down their rhythm in midfield, and also knowing how to use their direct force and counter-attacking ability against them. But coming into this match, people were worried that there would be a psychological disadvantage after that loss for Napoli, whether or not they'd feel the 4-0 loss, and that would play on their minds. At the same time, they were once again without Osimhen, and now without Simeone, and a barely capable Raspadori, because he too is not exactly in top condition. But the match starts, and Napoli were just fantastic. I mean, super fantastic. They already had 4 corners, 3 shots on goal, and 9 tackles in the first 15 minutes. And when you looked at the stat, all Milan had to say for themselves in those first 15 minutes was 1 tackle. It was just all Napoli. The defensive ferociousness, the intensity, the ability to win duels that we saw from Milan in that Serie A matchup, in that 4-0 victory, was just nowhere to be seen. They couldn't get a hold of the ball. They looked defensively broken and in shambles, as Napoli just created and overwhelmed and tried to really find their way through. But Kvaratskhelia missed a great opportunity in the very beginning of the match. And you really thought that Napoli was going to do something. But even though they had so many opportunities and shots on goal, they couldn't find a way through against Milan. And then against the run of play, there comes Brahim Diaz. I mean, this kid, you can really tell, or you can really see the Real Madrid within him, right? Because he's just such a big game player. He comes alive when the pressure is on, when everyone's watching, when the stadium is full. He's just that guy that comes alive. He loves it. And once again, you know, I mean, he was brilliant in Serie A in that matchup, but in Champions League, once again, it was him that took the ball, you know, got rid of his defenders, just turned away from them and dribbled down. Perfect counter-attack. It lands to Bennacer, who got his first Champions League goal. What a moment for Bennacer, who's been so brilliant. I mean, Stefano Pioli had said at the start of the season that he was someone to watch. He's always been someone to watch. I cannot believe that he might be available for 50 million, even if it's for 2 weeks in the summer. I don't even think it's this summer. I think it's next summer. But just such a brilliant midfielder. His ability on the ball, his ability off the ball. Where do we start with him? There's a reason why everyone wants Bennacer. But as it is, it was him that scored the goal. It was wonderful for Milan. And actually, they came close to managing a second. So after Napoli conceded that and they had started so magnificently, they were now on the ropes, and you could see them defensively scrambling at the back. They needed the halftime whistle to come for them to rearrange and refocus their energies on trying to now manage an equalizer. Second half comes, and once again, there's no striker up front. No one's been replaced. Raspadori hasn't come on. But Napoli do start really well again. It's them. They're trying to create. They're trying to find a way through. But unfortunately for them, on the 74th minute, Anguissa gets a second yellow card and is now sent off because of his foul on Theo Hernandez. So upsetting. Some people think it's controversial. In general, there's in general, there's been a lot of criticism for the referee for a lot of yellow cards. So Anguissa sent off, but to make matters worse, Kim gets a yellow card, which means he'll now be suspended for the return leg. So now we're looking at a Napoli side that will be without Anguissa, without Kim at the back. They say they have replacements and it should be fine, but what's most important to remember is Victor Osimhen will be back for that game, or at least Spalletti thinks so. But either way, they get the red card. Unfortunately, now they're down to 10 men and things don't look so good for Napoli anymore. You would think Milan would do a little bit more with the fact that they were now facing a side that had one man down. But actually, I mean, Pioli brought on Rebic. It didn't really manage to change anything or to allow them more opportunities. And around the 80th, 81st minute, Spalletti decided to seemingly accept the result and he took off Kvaratskhelia. So it looked like at that point he had settled on the fact that this was going to be a 1-0, time to really defend it and see what they could do in the return leg in their own stadium to try to overturn the result with Victor Osimhen back on the pitch. But actually, even with 10 men, interestingly, they came closest to scoring a goal, and Di Lorenzo had a brilliant shot saved by Maignan yet again with his strong wrists, managed to keep them out. So in short, a clean sheet. That's 5 clean sheets in a row for Milan in the Champions League. That is something to really like consider. It's brilliant. And Napoli will be, I guess, in some ways happy that it was only a 1-0. And that they can go back to their own stadium and hopefully in front of their own fans and be able to do something special. Now, Spalletti has called out because the atmosphere in San Siro was absolutely fantastic. I mean, if there's one thing you can really rely on is that the Milan supporters come out and they really support their team, do as much as they can to show you that this is Milan. I mean, to the extent that the concrete was just shaking beneath your feet, as some of my colleagues had told me and wrote on Twitter. So we know that the atmosphere is fantastic. I've been to San Siro so many times. It's my absolute favorite stadium, frankly, in Italy. And a lot of that has to do with the passion of the fans. And what Spalletti has asked for is that Neapolitans and those who do come to show their support for Napoli do so vociferously, because unfortunately in Serie A, we didn't see that from the fans. They're angry with the management, they're angry with the ownership rather, and what they feel is their freedom not really being allowed to be expressed, question marks on the prices and how much they're being tasked with paying. So there wasn't the support that Spalletti was hoping for. And he said if he doesn't see that in the return leg, then he'll be walking off. I don't think he'll be walking off, but either way, he certainly wants to have a similar type of atmosphere in the Stadio Diego Armando Maradona, so that perhaps Milan can feel a little bit shaky. Now, the next day, there's been some criticism in the newspapers of Milan and whether or not they should have taken this opportunity to really try to double their advantage and try to create more, considering Osimhen will be back for the second leg. And it's going to be much more difficult for them to really try to exert their brilliance. But hey, they won 4-0, so there's no reason to not believe that they could do something special. But either way, I'm kind of interested to think what you guys will see happening in the return leg. Will it be all about Victor Osimhen? Will the absence of Kim and Anguissa make a difference? Can Milan repeat what they managed 10 days ago in Serie A? It's all up in the air, but it should be a really thrilling game. So I'm excited to watch, and I hope you are too. Ciao for now.